I am here with my friend and colleague, Daniel Villalobos. Did I say it right?
Villalobos, yeah.
Daniel, welcome to the Journey to Heal podcast.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun today talking about the cannabis plant and the medicine that this plant has for the world. And I just can't help but wonder right off the bat what your relationship is and has been like to cannabis in this lifetime.
You know, it feels like it's a relationship, right? And like any relationship, there's been peaks and valleys and different levels of awareness, engagement, and understanding, right?
How old were you when you took your first hit?
I was waiting for that question already. I think I was 13.
Wow.
13 or 14. It's a pretty funny story. I don't remember if I've told you about it. Yeah, but there was this girl in my middle school that was kind of known by everybody as, you know, she was a little stoner. And I won't say any names.
No need.
Although I'm curious to what she's up to these days. But yeah, she was kind of known for it. My curiosity was peaking around that time, just with like Cheech and Chong movies and being around it, I guess, socially.
So you understood what cannabis was at 13?
To what a 13-year-old could understand, right? At that time, I said, this is kind of like a cigarette or that type of material that's burnable and it makes you feel good.
It makes you feel good. Yep.
Yeah, it makes you feel good. And now, obviously, my understanding and my perception of the plant is sort of different. It's definitely able to make you feel good, right? But it's all about your intention. So from the beginning, where I really just wanted to see what it was about. I wanted to know what it felt like. And the funny thing is, up to that point, I was actually starting to become a really good student. I was an honor roll student. And I was getting really curious.
Perfect.
And so I asked this girl who, you know, everybody knew was usually smoking at some point during the school day, even though we're only in 8th grade. But I know some people start sooner than that. But, you know, I approached her. We set up kind of like, let's do it at the end of lunchtime on this day. Yeah, we set a little date. And mind you, I don't know anything about how the apparatuses work. You know, what's kind of the etiquette, right? What's the smoking etiquette? And can
we just paint the picture? Are you a sweet little Christian boy too? Is this a sweet little Christian 13-year-old?
I don't know if I could say I was a sweet little Christian boy, but I was kind of a sweet little nerdy chubby schoolboy.
Perfect. I have the picture now. Thank you.
Right. I was into sports and like Nirvana, which
great. It sounds like the 90s.
Random.
Yeah.
It sounds like the 90s, definitely. And she had one of those old school kind of ceramic and metal pipes that had a little top that you could
I remember
screw
those.
On, right?
Yeah, just some hot little metal bowl, and you had to put a screen in it, right?
Right. If you were smart. If you don't want any crud in your system, in your mouth or your throat. So I, you know, not knowing how these things work, I had never seen a pipe like that. I started lighting it from the bottom. And I go, nothing's happening. And I'm, am I doing this right? And she goes, you stupid ass. You know, she was like,
gosh,
what is wrong with you?
I love that you remember every moment of this. Go on.
Oh yeah, it's not very flattering for me for sure, but it's fun. It's fun to reminisce on that experience.
Yeah, I smoked a bowl the first time. Mine was glass though, and it was in a friend's garage in 9th grade, I think. So yeah, I'm right there with you. Same time period, probably 1994.
Right, something like that. Yeah.
So back then, did you get high your first time? Because there are some people who don't get high the first time, correct? Have you heard that?
Yes. I mean, I've known maybe a few people.
Okay.
That
I did not. I
Yeah,
did not. I
maybe
was
they just
bummed.
didn't smoke enough, or
Mm.
it was not very good
I
quality,
probably didn't
or
even know how to inhale.
right,
Yeah.
right, right. Because then there's that's the thing with smoking, right? There's how long you can inhale, how long are you drawing for, how long are you holding for, right?
Mm.
And because we do breath work, I'm so much more conscious to each step of that practice, of that ritual now. Even like how we were just doing a continual conscious,
Right.
and I was doing it very slow. Like
Mm.
my 3 ended way after your 3, because that's just how I breathe now. And even when I'm taking a hit, I'm taking a draw, I do it very slow.
So,
And I'm
okay.
savoring it. Yeah.
I'm like so excited about our conversation, because let's pin over here breathwork plus cannabis, because that is something significant. You know that I am helping people combine psilocybin and breathwork.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's so much that we could put right here. Going back to
Yes.
13-year-old you,
Right.
you said,
High,
what
yes.
happened after that? You said, up until this moment, explain to us what happened with you and cannabis.
It's very embarrassing. Do you mean that day or just in general?
For the rest of the next couple of years. Then what did high school look like, right?
Got you. I had a very complicated relationship. Our relationship was like a high school relationship.
Yes.
And you know, I was even, and I don't really tell many people this, but I'm fully comfortable with it now. And you know, I got in a lot of trouble. I was incarcerated as a teen.
Wow.
For weed.
Yeah,
and
you're part of some statistic somewhere. Yeah.
Right.
And a minority, right? And a minority. And in California, right. I mean, there's a lot of stigma around that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, because of all that stigma, like you talk about, but also this very personal experience where anybody that's done time at any age for any period of time, you know, it's a difficult thing to go through. And for me at that age, I mean, it kind of set me on somewhat of a downward spiral.
Yeah.
So anyhow, yeah.
I'm glad you shared that. Thank you for allowing yourself to be vulnerable, because I do think it's an important part of this conversation. I mean, we are talking about a plant that is still technically illegal in what, half of the states? What's the split now? Do you know, versus legal versus illegal?
Well, I think if we're talking about, because there's sort of 3 categories, if you want to call it that, right? There's just completely not legal. It's completely illegal. Or I should say 4 categories. Completely illegal. Then there's for medical use only. And then there's, or maybe it is 3. I'm not even high, I promise you. And then there, or maybe I'm a little bit. And then there's, you know, medical and adult use. Great. Which is commonly referred to as recreational, but I'm kind of the group that would prefer to say adult use, because recreational implies that it's just for fun.
Yes.
Right? At least by like standard definition, right? So adult use and medical, just medical, or just not legal.
Yeah.
Which I want to say maybe I should know these a little more, right? I think. No,
you shouldn't.
But I want to say it's more like it's a third at least that is still illegal, just straight up illegal.
Well, I'm in South Carolina. Yeah. Right? Hello, yeah. Right over here, the South.
Prohibition state. That's kind of what that's considered.
And I feel as if my personal freedoms are more intact here, but that's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
In California. Yeah, right. It is. And in California, you're medicinal and recreational, both legal, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Like, what percentage of people, when you're walking around in California, do you think have cannabis in their systems? Just a guess. Just a wild fucking guess.
I want to say it somewhat depends where you are.
Got it.
Right.
Where are you right now? Are you in LA?
I'm in the Bay Area, right? Okay. So San Francisco Bay Area.
Great.
Where I would say it still depends, but pretty much everywhere out here in the Bay, you can get delivery. So you would be surprised probably who all has it in their pocket at a given time. But yeah, I would say it depends where you are. I mean, if you go somewhere up to, you know, what's kind of a legendary area of the state when it comes to marijuana roots and history is Humboldt County. I'm sure there's probably a good amount of people that have it, you know.
80 to 90% at any given gathering? I mean, in Humboldt County? Is that too high?
It would be a speculation, to be honest, because I don't personally know a lot of folks out there.
Well, look, we're talking about a plant. Let's back up for a second. We're talking about a plant that not just makes you feel good in some way, right? Let's break down cannabis now, if we could.
Yeah.
But it can help with a significant number of symptoms that most of us struggle with on a daily basis. Yes?
Right. Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit about the benefits of cannabis as a plant? Like, what does it heal? What does it cure? What is it good for?
Yeah, so I'd like to look at this question. I know that another way that we framed it is like, how is it a helpful and healing plant? And to answer that, I think, you know, we'll maybe turn back the clock a bit for maybe like a couple thousand years and just take note that it's been used as a medicine, whether it was for nausea, cramps, glaucoma, even personal hygiene, right? So it was used topically as well as burned. It was already being used in different forms.
Great.
You know, then we can also look at maybe for equally as long or longer, it's been used as a sacred offering to gods or ancestors, or simply to connect with the earth. Right? I know people that do, you know, moon ceremonies and they're integrating this, right? Just like you would with psilocybin. Some people use cacao. So communing with the plant spirit is another long time use. And I think aside from saying it's just for these symptoms, that has a healing benefit. Just to say, I'm using it with this intention to connect with the earth, to connect with plant spirits, to connect with other spiritual beings. That's helpful and healing in its own way, right?
Absolutely.
And I know you feel it.
Preach.
I can feel you.
Preach.
Yeah.
So good. Yes, it's so healing.
So, you know, yeah, I know. I'm feeling the FBCs, right? That's what I like to call it, the full body chills.
I like that.
So we fast forward a bit, right? And there's been at different points in time, I think it was like the 17th century or something, in different parts of this country where it was required to grow hemp.
Stop.
Yes.
Didn't know that.
Right. Fast forward a little bit more, right? And then, you know, in the 1900s is where it got really sticky. I mean, as late as, and this is, you know, my own research. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a doctor, but this is me just putting the time in myself. Looking on Wikipedia. No, I'm just kidding. Not Wikipedia, but
that's how we all learn these days.
You know, I think it was as late as like the late 1800s.
Okay.
You could go to like a pharmacy or a place like that and get medicinal preparations. Well, I think more so, you know, it was used very much like topically even as like tinctures, like an alcohol preparation.
For inflammation. Yeah.
Yeah. Different things like that. For sure.
For pain and inflammation. That makes sense. I think that's why I've loved the plant for so many decades. I don't think I was aware at 15 years old to, you know, 28 years old. I mean, a heavy user for a long time, that I was self-medicating, that I was like, it was making my body feel better. And I felt more connected to myself and to other people, usually in a better mood, right? It's a really potent medicine. It's really potent medicine if you have chronic inflammation, especially, and a lot of functionality is low. So I'm just appreciating your story here. Take us through. When did it start being looked at as like evil? Like when did people start shutting it down?
So from what I know, it's like around I want to say it's even a little bit before the Reefer Madness days, which was, God, what was that, 30s or 40s? 50s, something in there, right? So I want to say it was prior to that.
Okay.
it was made illegal.
You don't have to answer this question. Do you have a reason why you think it was made illegal, or why it became suppressed? Like psychedelics very much have this story too. You know, what do you think about that?
And I would love to have that conversation with you at some point, right? Even if it's just us. But you go back to the stigma as far as minority involvement, right? So I want, and specifically around this time that we're talking about, around the 20s or so, it was being viewed as something that Mexicans and African Americans, they're the ones that do this.
They're the problem.
And they're the ones that are committing crime because of this. It was just all kind of put into a box.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Least,
I mean, the term marijuana was essentially coined, right, to suppress and oppress the Hispanic population as the people who brought it here, right?
Let's just say you're right on the mark with that. How I've interpreted it, how I understand it, as far as the use of that word was framed more as, you know, this is a derogatory.
Yes, right? That's a good word for it.
Yeah. And it's associated with these people, with those people, right?
Is that term used in California still? Do you hear people throwing around the term marijuana? Or most people calling it, Yeah.
I mean, I think it depends what era you grew up in.
Sure. Right? I mean, it was always pot to me. I just smoked pot.
I know a lot of people that say pot. That's it. I mean, when I grew up, it was weed or trees.
Trees. Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And I love that way. That's kind of always been my preferred way. Or like some people say doja, some people say chronic, right? And I think, again, it depends on what era and maybe what territory you're in, or not territory, but like what region you're in.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. I think chronic was probably more Southern California.
Okay.
Right? Up here in the Bay, it's more like trees.
Yeah,
right. So it just kind of depends
trees.
where you are.
I was in the New York metropolitan area. It was either weed or pot in the 90s and 2000s. That's it.
Yep. Yeah.
That's
or
funny.
Some people say dope, right? But usually that's an older generation.
Yeah.
That's a little bit older generation smoking dope.
Yeah, reefer. I like calling it reefer. I think reefer is a fun word.
Reefer is a fun word, and that's kind of the cool part, but also feels like it's been. Like I'm sort of torn because it's been commercialized in a way where there's different words, like there's a brand BHANG, right? Some people say bang, but it's pronounced bong, right? And that's actually kind of a very old term from a different time and place. This is it's not an English word, right? Or there's like there's a brand that's very popular for edibles, for chocolate specifically, called Kiva. So you have all these words that are sort of being brought back into the mix. And I love that you asked that question, because it's kind of one of my favorite things to talk about is the different ways that people refer to the plant. Or people say grass, right?
Yes,
grass.
That's good.
I mean, there's just so many little pockets of history throughout time in just America. So at one point, there was a slogan, hemp for victory. During, I want to say, I might get this wrong, but it was either World War II or one of the big
for victory.
Hemp for victory. So they were really looking at all these farmers to produce hemp for like parachutes, for different materials that were for the soldiers, right? Or for people that were involved in that whole thing.
Wow.
So and then it's like a little bit further, then Nixon came in, war on drugs, and that just really
timed with the psilocybin, yeah, for sure.
Right. The
same thing was happening. Yes, this is all very dangerous. All these kids are dying. We need to say no to drugs. Yeah.
Right. But I think even just going a little bit further, 80s and 90s, helping people with cancer, helping people with AIDS.
Yes.
I mean, the healing available for people, just like we were talking about hundreds and thousands of years ago, for pain and inflammation, it's still the case today. That's probably one of the number one reasons that people use it, if it's for, that kind of thing, for healing, right?
Yes.
So that's where I was going to leave it off, is like all these
Fantastic.
things are still, these are still present. Everybody has
Yeah.
different
There's more pain
ailments.
now every year. There's more pain. There's a lot of pain. There's a lot of toxins. So there's a lot of pain. At least if you're
Yes.
someone who's built like me, that's really what we're up against. So
Mhm.
cannabis is a really brilliant medicine. What differentiates us before we get to strains? And because you have mentioned intentionality twice, what
Yeah.
differentiates recreational use from intentional use in your framework, in your opinion?
Well, and I don't mean to discount at all, like people that say want to just have fun, or want to have,
Sure.
or want to use it as a party favor. Like that almost
Mhm.
sounds a little like it's not honoring the plant. But I also want to say, like, if you're doing it responsibly, more power to you, right?
Yes,
Like
that's
it's
right. It's a lot
if you're not
safer than
going crazy.
alcohol as a recreational choice, in my opinion.
Yeah, and and because you mentioned that, it makes me think of how so many of these big industry companies are getting into the cannabis mix, and it's leading to some hard times for some, you know, long-time growers, legacy growers, and
Wow.
people that have been doing this for decades.
Oh, that's sad.
Because these big companies have a lot of
Yeah,
money. They can
yeah.
mass produce it. They're using certain techniques, and maybe, however safe it is, but I mean, with all the licensing and permits and taxes that you have to pay on all of this, like a
Yeah,
lot of these
it's
old
like an
timers are going
organic
out.
vegetable farm or dairy farm too. Yeah, they're up against a lot there. So that's
Yeah.
interesting, that the economic perspective of what legalization and popularization of it as a product all over our culture. I mean, people I never would have thought eating edibles or eating edibles. Like in my world, it's pop
Yeah.
culture. It's very
It totally
accepted
is. It
to take
totally
some
is.
cannabis. It's
It totally
fascinating.
is. And I love that you mentioned the economics too, because it's all part of the whole equation.
Sure.
And yeah, there's so many different, like the pot using demographic, or I should say, it just like it's in almost every demographic now, right? Like if you can get
Yes.
your hands on it, you're
Yep.
trying it.
Yep.
So kind of to go back even a little more, right? We're talking about healing. So you said for yourself personally, right? The way you're built. So whether that's um, fibromyalgia or nerve pain or osteoporosis or whatever it is, right?
Yeah,
Like
Crohn's
there's so
disease, all these
Crohn's
digestive
disease,
diseases. Yeah.
autism, ADHD, yeah, digestive disorders. Um, I mean, to me, like now I'm like, and because anxiety and depression are part of it, I'm thinking this could be helpful in conjunction with other
Yes,
modalities
of
for
course.
healing trauma, right?
100%,
Yeah,
100% agree with you there.
yeah.
For sure. And psilocybin and cannabis are good friends too. So the two
Mm,
in conjunction for someone with, complex PTSD, like there's some really beautiful rewiring that can happen with both of those medicines, especially if you're weaving some breath work in too.
yeah.
So, okay, should we
And
talk about strains next or breath work?
yes.
And because we've got too many exciting topics on the table here.
Well, and then you also brought up pop culture, and I'm thinking, how ironic is that part of the crowd that was being demonized for it was like jazz musicians
Yep.
back in the day, and these different
Oh, it was a
types of
creative
people
tool
who
for
who
them.
are, yeah. I mean, this is just them living, right? They're
Yes.
living to their fullest, and maybe they weren't all doing it responsibly, but it's not fair to just group it all, right?
Nope.
But I just think it's ironic now. It's very pop culture, comedians, musicians, celebrities, even athletes now. There's athletes that are in the
Wow.
game, right? Mike Tyson has his own brand. There's plenty of athletes that are partnering with CBD companies,
Yep. That's right.
right, to promote different products.
Yeah, and
And
every
yeah,
and
very
every
popular.
mom, every stay-at-home mom I know too is also buying all of those products.
Oh
So
yeah, and not even just that, but pregnant moms.
yeah, so can we talk about that for 1 second? Because that has come up a few times recently, cannabis and pregnancy. And I chose it, my second pregnancy. I chose it and sporadically. And I read the studies that came out of Jamaica because they seem the most unbiased. And Yeah, calmer, happier kids that are better sleepers for the most part is what came out of the studies. And my second is truly all of that. He's a little ray of sunshine and slept great and happy kids. So I don't know. What do you think about cannabis and little babies?
It makes me think about how we talk about sovereignty. Right, because it's everyone's choice. It's kind of like the conversation of, hey, is this okay that this person with cancer is using it? No, I don't think they should because so and so said so. It's their decision.
That's right.
It's always your choice. I've heard stories like yours with different moms that were, and whether they were smoking or they were taking, microdosing, different forms, that it helped them, whether it was morning sickness or it was postpartum. Like there's pregnant moms and just having given birth moms that are doing it right, and their kids are, they're like, our kids are amazing.
They're
right?
expanded. Yeah, they're like, woo!
Yeah.
It's so great. Thank you for sharing that you've heard good anecdotal feedback on it. I have as well. So strains, you have two things to choose from for your next question. Talking about indica and sativa, or breath work and cannabis.
Let's go strains for 300, right?
Strain, yes, 300. The question is, can you break down indica and sativa for us and the application of both of those for the practical home cannabis enthusiast?
Yeah, so strains, I feel like the common misconception is that it has to do with the effect that you will receive, right? Indica, the very cheesy phrase is in the couch. That's how you tell the difference, right? Indica is in the couch. Sativa is more of a bright, uplifting, cheery, but when it comes down to more of like the science, it has to do with the physical makeup of the plant more than it does the effects. So I know one of your questions was how do I know which strain to choose? I feel like if you're doing this on your own, right, and you want to do the research, you want to do the work, I would start with terpenes. That's the most important part.
What is a terpene?
So the terpene is one of the chemical compounds. So this is in almost every
CBD too, or
every type
hemp.
of plant life.
Hemp.
Every type of plant life.
Every type of plant.
Yeah. So we've talked about essential oils a little bit too, you and me, and there's some terpenes. So this is an aromatic element, a chemical compound that's in the plant that's responsible for the smell, and for the most part, a lot of the physiological effects that you'll receive.
Is it that first part that's lit? Is it like the crystally part on the outside of the plant? When you got some really beautiful bud and it's like sparkling at you? Is that the terpene?
It's very sparkly. Yeah. So what that is it's so cool. I don't know if you've ever seen these up close. All those little sparklies are resin glands that are coming off the plant.
Whoa.
Right. So
what is important about that as the user, or is that are the terpenes different in the indica than in the sativa?
So that's the other tricky part, right? So depending who the cultivator is, or even who the seller is, they can name it whatever they want.
Right.
When it really comes down to it.
Interesting.
Now there's the common, I'm going to call this cookies, right? That's one of the most popular strains probably anywhere now.
Cookies.
I'm going to call this cookies, but cookies has been around for a little while now. There's a lot of different cuts, right, of cookies that have been crossed with other plants.
Oh, interesting.
So if you say this is the original cookies, then that means it was made up of these particular strains that were crossed, right? But somebody could say, I want to call this ice cookies or sugar cookies, right? And really, it's maybe they did something a little different maybe they crossed it with something else, but don't want to say. Not everybody is all upfront about what they're
like the
doing.
secret formula of what's happening behind the scenes of a particular grower or distributor, and they're not necessarily sharing with each other, but people are coming up with all these combinations, so there'll be different variations of a Kush, right? There's the pineapple Kush, and there's this Kush. Is Kush generally going to be more indica dominant?
I would say generally, in my own experience, it can kind of be somewhere in the middle.
That's interesting. But okay, so could you explain that then? What is a hybrid, right? So we have these two strains, sativa and indica, and from what I understand, neither has a pure variation. Like everything is kind of hybridizing now. Is there truth to that?
Yeah. So, and I just want to, I feel like I don't want to offend growers or anybody in the industry, right? So I don't mean to say that they're all doing it, that they're all kind of masking this on purpose, but it is out there. Right. So somebody can have the same genetics of two different plants, and maybe they're just calling it a different name because they want it to stand out. Right. Or maybe they want to refer to this in a specific way because it has meaning to them. Wow. So when you're talking about like a hybrid, you're getting so just to kind of speak to, I guess, traditionally indica and sativa, right? Like indica is the more sedating, sleepy time, and then sativa is more uplifting.
Yeah, that's the ADHD cure, the sativa. That was that's some like focus stuff for me. Go ahead.
Right. So if you look at effects that are associated with each type, and then you think about a hybrid, you're getting both. It's like you're getting this multifaceted experience from the same plant, right? So like maybe it starts out very euphoric, and you're able to kind of be out there in space, and then you come down and you're just super calm and relaxed, and you're getting both.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. And I love everything hybrid in terms of like both of those things for my own experience. I oftentimes need to be calmed down and uplifted at the same time in my own experience. That's why I think it's a helpful plant for trauma and everything that we've been talking about too, not just all the physical health pieces, the mental health pieces, which we haven't touched on as much either. So before we get to breath work and cannabis, let me ask you this. Is it addictive? Talk to us about cannabis and dependency or addiction, just your point of view on it. Because I certainly have a dependence on this plant.
On the cannabis plant?
Yeah. And I'm evaluating it now in my life and thinking about how much of it I want in this second half. I'm 42. But yeah, I grapple with the addiction factor with this. And I know a lot of other people who do, wonder, like, can I pare it down? I've become so dependent. It's a wonderful, helpful thing. What's your thoughts on it?
Absolutely. And I want to start by saying that's very valid. And you definitely are not the only one. I mean, I personally know other people that are either currently in that I don't want to call it struggle, right? But you're in that experience right now.
Intentional evaluation.
Evaluation, yes. And I know some people that are, on the other side of that already. So
that's encouraging.
To be very honest, there's been points in my life where I was dependent. And I mean, this was still teenage years. So I feel like it's similar to a lot of things, right? It has to start with awareness, right? And being honest with yourself. Maybe there's ways that you are abusing it that you're not being honest with yourself about.
I think that's a really good point. And in fact, my use changed when I started treating the plant with more intention and less like a fast supplement to make my discomfort go away very quickly. If we're talking about smoking, have to be more patient with anything edible. And I would love to talk about that a little bit too. Just
absolutely.
The transit time when you take the product in. So we know indica and sativa. Let's save breathwork for the end. Keep taking us into using the medicine, because I think we're following a flow here. Let's talk about how you can put it in your body, cannabis, all of the ways. Could you break that down
And
for the listeners?
I love that we're just covering the whole, and there's, like you said, we can go on forever.
Like hours we could do this. But yeah, we're deep diving cannabis as medicine.
And so I'll sort of cap off the terpenes aspect of it,
sure.
just to sort of wrap up also the indica and sativa. So the effects that are typically related to these different types, those are brought on by the different terpenes. So there are specific terpenes that are associated with calm and sedation and for uplifting. And so if you look at, and this is what I said, if you look at different plant life, different, things that grow from the earth. And we talk about essential oils, right? So a very concentrated version. So some of the terpenes that would be in, say, a wild orange essential oil. So it's coming from orange peel, right? Uplifting, right? Happy, cheerful, bright. And then you think of maybe like basil or black peppercorn, and the effect that's a little more tuned into that effect, right? So these are different ones. These are natural.
It's all the aromatic though, right? The terpene is the part that makes the weed smell like sweet when you smoke it, that distinct smell. Yeah.
Right. Whether it's piney or it's sweet or it's fruity or it's woody even, right? There's so many different ways.
So the terpenes are where it's at. Those are the chemical compounds. How do we get the terpenes in our body?
Yeah, so let's see. Everybody's favorite, right? Burnables. Smoking, inhalation. And I say that because from my generation, that's the most popular, right?
Yeah,
the burnables.
Me too. And so it's the most immediate application of the medicine, let's get honest, right? For spiritual or pain or whatever you need to soothe, it's immediate. I mean, how many minutes does it take from the hit to holding it in the lungs until you feel a change in your brain?
I want to say that most like cannabis educators will preface it by saying it could be 10 to 15 minutes, but for most people it is immediate. It's minutes.
2 minutes for me. 2 minutes, 3 minutes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's like your joints, pipes, bongs, blunts. For some people it's spliffs, right? Which is when you blend it with tobacco. That's very popular, different parts of the world.
Yes.
Especially like you mentioned, Jamaica. For concentrate lovers, right? That's including what's called a dab rig, or
what's that? What's the dabs?
So the dabs are when you are heating, and there's so many different ways to go about this. I'm like, let me try to get organized about this. But a dab rig. So if you picture a bong, right? Typically you have a bowl, and I don't have one of these. So you have one of those. I don't have a rig myself to show you, but let's say in place of that bowl, there was like more of, how do I call it? I can't believe I can't remember the name of it right now, but it would be a different attachment that kind of hangs out, right?
And allows you to light it differently, right? I mean, you got to light the dab.
And you can't use a lighter. Typically, it has to be like a torch.
What? Why? What's the difference?
Because it's so concentrated that it needs to reach a certain burning point.
Wow.
Now the perceived upside to this is that you can use even smaller amount because it's so concentrated.
Is that why people like the dabs? The level of concentration that it is, the cannabis, the impact?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, you get real fucked up. You get a lot of flavor. I mean, the things that people are doing, whether it's hash or wax or shatter or live resin, all these different types of concentrates, sugar, crystals, there's so many different types, and a lot of the flavor is intact. So it would be sort of like smoking a whole joint to maybe taking just a couple dab hits.
Got it.
Because
Okay.
it's so, I mean, I've done it a few times and it was like, I'm in the
I
stratosphere.
felt like I melted
was
my
in the
brain the
stratosphere.
one time I did it. Yeah, I was so fucked up. And then the next day I was like, oh my God, I melted my brain. But it's intense. I mean, it was fun. It was good. But yeah, not a regular. I couldn't imagine doing something like that regularly for me. But my tolerance is much lower than the average, 30-year cannabis user.
Yeah. Well, and maybe it's not necessarily that you have so much experience, but if you think about, let's say maybe the quality of material that was around when we first started smoking and the quality now.
Yeah.
Right. So there's people that are just starting out and they're used to this, right? They're dabbing every day. That's their usual. And so I think from my observation, it's not necessarily a novelty thing. Do I think you could use it as medicine in that way? Sure.
Yeah. So you're getting the benefits of the cannabis plant by doing the concentrate of the dab.
Yeah.
Great. That's so cool. Thank you for sharing that. So, and that's a smoking method. Now you can also put those dabs in like those light up battery operated shimmy shams, right? And then smoke a dab with a vape implement. Yes.
Exactly. So vapes are still pretty popular for discretion, for ease of use, minimal smell, very clean, compact, convenient. There's so many different types and vendors compared to even a few years ago when I worked in the dispensary. This also includes dry herb vapes, right? If you want to just put flower. There's a company called Pax, which is what I use. This is a Pax Vape, and they're based out of San Francisco.
Very slim.
So it's a little oil, it's a little pod that you put in here.
Wow.
So one of the more common ones is like the screw-on types, right?
Yeah, that's what we got
very
here.
Common.
Yeah.
And I mean, these you can order, but I don't know if you can order the pods out there, but you can order the vape itself. So there's that type, right? So you have the oil, or you have a dry herb, or you have some of these types that also can burn the concentrates. There's even sort of these rigs, which are not to be used with a torch, but it has a mechanism built in that it can do the work for you, and you just have to press the button.
Wow.
Right? Whether it's in a pen type or it's a bigger, device, like what you have.
This is where technology has met with smoking. I mean, it's just so fascinating to see all of the ways that we can take it in. And I would regret not saying here for the listener that, vaping can be dangerous, and you do want to make sure that you're sourcing a quality product. How do you make sure of that, Daniel? How do you make sure you're not hitting a vape pen that's like going to put you in the hospital? Because that's happened to quite a few people.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. Even when I was working in the industry directly like that at a shop, there was a lot of black market vapes. I mean, there still is, just to be honest. And the tricky part is that, let's say in a place like where you are, where it's not even legal, people are still selling these products in the smoke shop.
That's right.
Right? Maybe it's not out in the glass, or maybe it is. But usually if you're in a legal state, and it's being regulated, which means there's people inspecting, there's certain procedures protocol you have to follow.
Got it.
Testing, everything that's for sale is supposed to be tested if you're in a legal market, right? So in California, I'm like, do I have anything I could show you? I should have had that. But there's certain stickers that have to be applied to every product.
Wow. So there's some quality control here. So the kids who ended up in hospitals were getting some shitty black market vape products. Is that what you're saying, in your opinion?
For the most part, from what I saw, yeah. Because the other aspect, as far as like not just the oil or the liquid that's inside the chamber itself, but if this is being produced in a very shoddy way, maybe there's metal elements that have made their way in, right? So whether it's lead or other types of metal.
Wow.
And this is one of the things that most flowers, like I said, if you're in a legal market, it's required, if you want to sell it, that it's being tested for pesticides, for metals, for moisture content, for other miscellaneous
whatever could end up in there.
Right? I mean, I've seen different bugs in flowers that have shown up. I've seen people's hair. I've found just random different, I don't even know what, you know. It's that was kind of the fun part of working directly with the plant for a few years, and part of in processing it as well. That was something that I also did. So I'd have just like a pound on the table in front of me, and I'm sorting through it, you know, packaging it, weighing it out, packaging it. That was something that I did for a little while. So I got to be like in there,
touching a lot of flower,
hands and eye. Oh, that was it's a beautiful experience. Like I don't think there's anything better unless you're actually able to work in a grow yourself.
Yeah.
And like cultivating, and that's something that's like I dream of someday, that I can see from seed all the way up to this beautiful plant. Someday I want to do that.
Oh, I have no doubt you're not going to do that. Your passion for cannabis and your knowledge is that's got to be part of your story here. Yeah, so do you feel complete on
the ways to use it? No, not at all.
Oh, bring it.
There's a lot to say, right? So
okay. So far we've only touched on smoking.
Smoking and inhalation, right? Okay. Which is, you're correct, it's the most immediate. And yeah, do I think it was, you know, black market? More so, yes. Majority of people that were getting sick, it was black market vape.
So here's my thing with inhalation and smoking. There's a combustion element for me when you put the heat and the fire with the plant that I think is the part that's not good for my health. Like that's the part where I feel like my throat feels it when I smoke. So like my chest feels it when I smoke, even if it's the cleanest herb, right? I had to give up on vape pens that would just tighten up my chest too much, even when they were clean. So I know I'm ultra sensitive. And there's something about lighting that delicate, beautiful terpene on fire that's so very different from eating it.
Yes. And I love that it perfectly segued to what I was going to say next, which is edibles. And I jump around a lot. So
we both do. It's fine.
I wanted to give you some advice, because it does look like you do like to partake in the inhalation still. You have your bong right there.
Yeah.
You got to keep it clean. Not just for the smoke. Yeah. I've seen worse. So not just for the experience in the moment of taking it in, but there's a lot of bacteria and different microorganisms that can grow in a bong apparatus. Yeah. Or a pipe. And it doesn't matter what material it is.
So it doesn't have to be a bong or a bubbler that has water. Even a glass pipe or a metal pipe is getting really dirty. If someone keeps hitting that same implement, they have to be aware. I mean, eventually it clogs, right? It's like there's only so much buildup that it can handle.
Well, especially if you have some particularly resinous flower, right? Like it's really sticky, and it's coming through that device. So there's that, and the bacteria that's coming from your breath, from your mouth, from your hands.
Wow.
Is everybody being super sanitary and putting gloves on and all?
Yeah, not likely. I don't share it with anyone else, but
at least that. So the other thing I was going to say is some people like to put ice inside the bong to
my husband has done that for me. Do you think it makes a difference?
For some people. For me, it's very minor. It's very minimal. It's not that big of a difference. It's just a cooler
inhalation.
Smoke. Yeah. Cooler smoke.
So anyway, I'm sharing that personally for those listening, because I think, you know, when I'm approached by someone who's newer to plant medicine and wants to use it intentionally for healing, they're intimidated by smoking. And, you know, we're going to get to edibles, and there's more than plenty to cover in the edible category. And I just want to assure those listening that you don't have to smoke or have had experience with using cannabis and smoking it to start to enjoy the benefits that THC can offer. So
THC or CBD or CBG
Yeah, exactly,
or
right.
CBDA or
That's it.
THCA.
Keep going. And the list goes on.
The
Yeah,
list goes
all the
on.
compounds, all the compounds.
Yeah, there's more coming out all the time.
That's cool.
And a lot of them are not intoxicating, right? But they have their medicinal benefits. So yeah, we talk about edibles. And I mean, the available spread is pretty imaginative. I mean, I've seen so many different types. Everyone knows about cookies, brownies, gummies, but there's also infused popcorn, ice cream, mints, nuts, honey, high quality confections like caramels, marzipan, lollipops, marshmallows. Shout out to this company called Mellow. They do infused microdose marshmallows. Wow. They're not paying me. I just think it's super fucking cool. And that's just to name a few, right? And so to go back to your point about the combustion.
Yeah.
So of course, these are magical that you can just eat it or drink it or whatever. And I'll get to the beverages in a moment, but something has to happen to that material before it becomes active, right? So there's something called decarboxylation or decarbing, right? So it's being heated to the point that these compounds on the plant, which THC actually starts as THCA, which is THC acid. So once you activate it, now it becomes intoxicating. There's that chemical change.
So that explains why you can't just pull a bud out of your stash and chew on it and swallow it and nothing will happen, because you haven't carboxylated it.
Decarboxylated
it, which involves heating it, right? On a low heat. You can put it in the oven from a practical standpoint, or there's all sorts of contraptions now.
There is, and I can speak to that as well. So I this is something that I've been doing for, I think, going on 5 years now. Decarbing, infusing my own coconut oil. So when we talk about edibles, usually it begins with a carrier oil. Okay. Whether it's coconut oil, olive oil, you can pretty much use any fat-based oil.
Gotta be fat, though. It needs to be a fat.
Yeah, butter for the most part. Yeah. Butter is a very popular one because a lot of people would rather make cookies and brownies with butter than they would oil, right? Yeah. It gives it a different type of moisture and softness and flavor. So yeah, I've used the contraptions. I really don't recommend using the oven, and for a couple reasons.
Oh, don't use the oven. You're saying if you're going to start.
I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
I don't recommend it.
Why not? Yeah. It's not safe.
There's that, right? There's a safety. So, I mean, you would have to have, I won't say have to, right? But either you're checking for what the actual temperature is that this oven is heating at, right? Like I'm checking the turkey every however long.
Right.
So there's kind of the, what's the accuracy, right, of what the heat is at. Then there's the smell, which, yeah, just the look on your face says it all. And depending who you live with, you don't want that just out in in the open, right? Okay. So I highly recommend getting a contraption. Again, these folks are not paying me, although if they want to contact me, it's all good. But one of the most well-known ones is called Ardent. It's a woman-owned company.
Nice.
Based out of the East Coast.
Great.
They have a couple different products. One is called the Nova, which does only decarboxylation. Or actually, I think now they have different inserts that you can use it to also infuse. Wow. But they also have a newer product called the FX or the Flex, which will do the decarb, the infusion, and it can bake for you all in the same device.
Holy crap.
So it's pretty awesome. Yeah. And
on your counter next to your Vitamix. Yeah.
Totally. I mean, it's, holiday season. I wouldn't doubt that they're having some, special deals.
I love that it's a woman-owned business and they're helping people eat their weed. It's great.
So, and that's one of the things they promote is, the accuracy and kind of that sustained heat level for a specific period of time that will fully activate. So what they advertise is that you will get 97 to 100% of the potency
Holy
using
smoke.
their device. Whereas if you use an oven, you're losing a lot of that.
Oh, okay. So yeah, the
Right?
devices make sense. I have a magical butter machine. Do you know that one?
I also have used that. Yeah, I just broke the handle on mine. But yeah, I
Oh,
love that. I love that machine, but you still need to decarb, right? So
okay.
that machine is great in regards to just if you want to make a variety of different things, whether it's butters, oils, tinctures, you can use a lot of things. The other thing to consider with these devices is that some of them have like min max levels, right? I know the magical butter machine does. So
Yes.
it's between 2 and 5 cups. So the difference per se, like with the Ardent FX, which is a newer device, and I'm not really familiar with how magical butter has kept up, but as from what I know with the Ardent, the difference would be that there's no really minimum. So you can make a small batch of
Oh,
something if
that's
you want.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool. And this is how you would make a topical product too. Is the edible, do you need to make a fat to ingest it? Well, let's get to topicals in a minute because that's probably a
Yeah.
separate category for you, right? See, I'm starting to understand how organized you showed up to this interview right now is what I'm starting to realize. It's great.